looms large with his philosophy of marrying modernity with traditional grassroots culture. And I think it's not only in Pakistan, but I see this philosophy coming to prominence all around the world, even in Russia. I think Vladimir Putin subscribes to a similar brand of enlightened conservatism. When you see progressive things around the world, you benefit from them, but you stay true to your sort of your inner core, your collective soul. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's becoming so popular around the world?
Because whenever you try and superimpose another culture on a nation, it doesn't work. You know, colonialism, what did it do? What the colonialists created was a thin lot of people who imitated the colonialists, who in Pakistan would be called the westernized elite. But there was a big gap between them and the rest of the population. So nations evolve organically. They borrow from all over the world, but they are rooted in their own culture and history. If you cut that off, I mean, it has severe consequences all over the world. When you cut off a country from its roots, a nation, and try and ape another culture, they become neither one thing or the other. In Urdu, we say neither a titar or a bater, neither quail or a partridge. So it's very important that the countries stay rooted in their own history and culture, and that's how countries evolve as a whole. What has happened after colonialism is that you have a tiny set of elite which pretends that they're Western, and the gap between them and the rest becomes wider and wider. It's what happened in Iran. The Iranian Revolution was that the elite of the Shah of Iran became cut off from the mass of the population. So there was a huge reaction against it. In Pakistan, what we are trying to do is obviously learn from all advanced societies, and right now, the nation we can learn most from is China, because if my main emphasis is to raise people out of poverty, no human society has achieved what China has done. So therefore, we learn from everyone, but we should be rooted in our own culture, history, religion.
Now, since you mentioned China, China played a subtle but I think very significant role in facilitating Russian-Pakistani exchanges, and I know that recently while visiting Beijing you suggested that Islamabad can act as a mediator between Beijing and Washington. What makes you believe, I'm sorry for being blunt, but what makes you believe that mediation is even possible? Because as far as I understand the American psyche, they are not after understanding, they are not after negotiating on the level playing field, they are after preserving dominance. Would China agree to that?
Look, the America I know is very diverse. Any country, for instance, what is happening in India is not what Indians are like. This is not the India of Nehru and Gandhi. This is the India of Narendra Modi. A tiny, highly organized elite has taken over India, just like the Nazis took over Germany. So, you know, at a given point, there is this extreme nationalism which has been released in the US, and they want this dominance. But surely there are sensible voices in the US saying that conflict is where you are heading. Conflict, Cold War is not the way. There is another way where it could be win and win for everyone. And I certainly believe that the cooperation between China and the United States, and even for that matter Russia, will benefit mankind much more than a conflict.
I wish I had more time. I have many more questions, but let me ask the final one. And it's a bit cheesy, but I ask it sincerely because you've reached the pinnacle of your sporting career by giving your country its first and only victory in the Cricket World Cup. How do you hope to be remembered? What do you want to give to your people as the Prime Minister?
That's a simple answer. I would love to emulate China in terms of bringing people out of poverty. Two things I want. One thing is if I can bring people out of poverty, but related to that is rule of law. You see, problem with poor countries, developing world, is they don't have rule of law. That's why they're poor countries.
But even developed world doesn't have the rule of law. They have the international law for everybody else, but not for themselves.
Yeah, there are two different things. There's the rule of law within the country, and then Rule of law between countries, that doesn't exist. The powerful always want to be above law. But within the countries, countries only prosper when they have rule of law. The third world or the term banana republic is not because a country is poor because of lack of resources. They don't have rule of law. They have law of the jungle. So human societies are defined by two great things: rule of law and a welfare society. A society that is humane and just and looks after its people who are not so privileged, who are poor. And so that's how I want to be remembered. If I can bring rule of law in Pakistan and raise our people out of poverty on the lines what China has done, I would be able to meet my maker with confidence.
Well, best of luck, I'm sure. I mean, you followed all your dreams throughout your life, so it seems like you're on the road to succeed.
I'm one of those few privileged people who, whatever he asked from the Almighty, he got it. And this is my last wish that, if I can succeed because I believe that if you have rule of law and if you can bring people out of poverty and look after a humane society, then you don't have to do it. The society goes up then. A nation rises when it rises inclusively. It doesn't rise when a tiny people keep getting richer and the rest are left behind. It rises what China has done. You see, China is remarkable. In fact, what China has done is what our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he built the first society in the 7th century. And that society had these two things: rule of law, and it was the first welfare state in the history of mankind. And they became the greatest civilization for hundreds of years.
Can I ask you one last question? Because you mentioned the Almighty, and I've been an observer of global politics for quite some time, to believe that any leader can succeed with the help, can only succeed with the help of a higher spirit, whatever we call it. I mean, we have many religions, but at the end of the day, the spirit is one and only. And that force, that higher force, demands of you being true to yourself, being true to the cause that you are serving. But politics is such a field that is impossible to operate in without manipulation. How do you balance this need to be effective, if you will, and to be true to the power that powers you?
Very simple. You compromise to reach your objective. You never compromise on the objective itself. So as long as I make all the compromises to get to where I'm very clear. I explained to you rule of law and welfare state. But if I find that I have to compromise where my objective is going to be affected, then I don't compromise.
Well, Prime Minister, it's been a great pleasure talking to you. I hope your team receives as much hospitality as we've benefited from here. Best of luck in Moscow, and best of luck for your endeavors.
I'm looking forward to my trip to Moscow.